You, what if you discovered your ancestors were once travelers with God, known as the Habiru? Imagine for a moment that you are a descendant of a people who lived over 4,000 years ago. These were not ordinary people, no. They were known as the Habiru, a group who lived during the second millennium BC. They were sojourners, migrants crossing borders and boundaries, constantly in motion. The journey was their home. Now think about this. What if their story, their migrations, their experiences echo in your own life today? What if their steps mirror your own journey, your own struggles, your own triumphs? Could it be? Could their DNA be flowing in your veins? Could their spirit be whispering in your soul? What if you found out that their journeys and migrations bear striking similarities to your own life's journey? After all, we are all travelers on this planet, seeking, searching and sojourning. The question remains, what if? The Habiru, also known as Habiru, were sojourners, foreigners, strangers who crossed over borders into unfamiliar lands. These individuals, who lived during the second millennia BC, were our ancestors. They were people like us, who moved from one place to another, often driven by faith that they would find protection and guidance along their journey. Let's delve deeper into the word Habiru, or Habiru. It's a term that has roots in Sumerian, Akkadian, Ugaritic and Egyptian languages. Today, many scholars use it to describe sojourners, foreigners, aliens and strangers who migrated across borders into lands foreign to them. The inhabitants of these lands in turn often labeled these newcomers as Habiru. In Hebrew, a similar word, abar, means crossing over. This term, according to renowned Hebraist lexicographers H.W.F. Gesenius and Brown Driver Briggs, appears 556 times in the Bible. It begins with the meaning to alienate or alienation, describing an action that estranges one's existence within a new culture. It portrays someone who sojourns, crosses over into a new place, both alien to them and in which they are seen as aliens, strangers, foreigners, nomads, wanderers, outside the protections of local laws and customs. So who were these Habiru? They were people like Abraham, Jacob, Moses and Joshua. They were individuals who, driven by faith, crossed over into new territories, becoming aliens in foreign lands. They were our ancestors, the sojourners of yesteryears. The story of the Habiru is a story of alienation and crossing over. It's a story of people who, driven by faith and the need for better lives, ventured into the unknown, and in many ways, it's a story that mirrors the experiences of modern-day migrants who cross borders in search of safety, opportunity, and a better life. Their story is one of alienation, of crossing over, a tale that resonates with many of us today. It's a story that takes us back to our roots, inviting us to explore the deep connection we share with our ancestors, the Habiru. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll continue unraveling the captivating history of God's sojourners. Could we in fact be descendants of these ancient tribes scattered across the earth as described in Genesis chapter 11 verses 1-11? Imagine for a moment that we are the offspring of these wanderers, these sojourners who traversed lands and seas, driven by a faith that was as boundless as the horizons they pursued. Delving into the biblical narrative, we find a fascinating connection between the Habiru and the generations of Shem. Genesis 11:10 recounts the lineage of Shem, from whom the term Semite is derived today. It's a lineage that spans generations, capturing the essence of our human journey. A journey marked by movement, change, and adaptation. What is striking about the Habiru, the generations of Shem, and indeed each one of us, is the concept of migration as an act of faith. The act of leaving the familiar behind and stepping into the unknown, guided by an unshakable belief in divine protection and guidance. This notion of migration is deeply embedded in the term Habiru or Habiru. Many scholars interpret these words as denoting sojourners, foreigners, aliens and strangers, those who cross over borders into foreign lands. The verb abar, which appears 556 times in the Bible, captures this idea of crossing over, of transitioning from one state of existence to another. And isn't that what life is all about? A series of transitions, a succession of crossings over from one stage to another. We see this pattern mirrored in the lives of notable biblical figures such as Abraham, Jacob, Moses, and Joshua, all of whom were sojourners, all of whom crossed over into new territories, driven by their faith. So, we return to our initial question. Could we, in fact, be descendants of these ancient tribes? Perhaps. But more importantly, we share a spiritual lineage with them. A lineage marked by faith, resilience, and the courage to journey into the unknown. What if we could still hear the echoes of their faith, guiding us in our own journeys? Historians tell us that the inhabitants of foreign lands labeled these migrants as Habiru. This term, found in Sumerian, Akkadian, Ugaritic, and Egyptian texts, was used to describe people who were outsiders, foreigners, or sojourners, people who had crossed borders into a land that was unfamiliar to them. The term Habiru carries with it a sense of alienation, of estrangement, of being a stranger in a strange land. It describes a person who has taken a step, made a decision, to move from one place, one situation to another, often on faith, believing that they would be guided and protected. But what does this term really mean? In Hebrew, we find a tri-letter consonant pronounced abar, which means crossing over. This verb appears more than 500 times in the Bible and is described by Hebraist lexicographers H.W.F. Gesenius and Brown Driver Briggs as an action that alienates one's existence within a new culture. In essence, the Habiru were those who crossed over into a new place, a place that was foreign to them, a place where they were seen as aliens, strangers, foreigners, nomads, wanderers. They were sojourners, living outside the protections of the local laws and customs. It is from this concept that we derive the original meaning of the word outlaw as one who lives outside the laws. But these sojourners, these Habiru, were not just outsiders. They were people of faith. People who believed in a higher power guiding their steps, people who took risks, who dared to cross borders and venture into the unknown. They were people who, despite being labeled as outlaws, as foreigners, as strangers, persevered. In their time, the Habiru were outsiders, sojourners in a strange land. Yet they persevered. And as we will see in our next episode, some of these sojourners, these Habiru, would go on to play significant roles in the history of mankind. So, stay tuned for our next What If episode, where we continue our exploration of God's sojourners. Among these sojourners we find familiar names: Abraham, Jacob, Moses, and Joshua. Each of these figures, central to the narratives of the Bible, were also sojourners, wanderers, migrants in their own right. They were Habiru in the truest sense of the term. Abraham, the father of nations, was called by God to leave his homeland, his comfort zone, and embark on a journey to an unknown land. Abraham, the sojourner, became the epitome of faith, trusting in God's promise and crossing over into the unfamiliar. Jacob, later named Israel, was also a sojourner. He fled his homeland due to fear and deception, only to return years later, transformed and ready to reconcile with his past. Jacob's journey was both physical and spiritual, a testament to resilience and transformation. Then we have Moses, born into a world of oppression and injustice. Moses was a sojourner from birth. Being an Israelite raised in Egyptian royalty, his life was a series of crossings over, from palace to wilderness, from Egypt to Sinai, from shepherd to leader. Moses, the deliverer, embodied the spirit of the Habiru, leading his people to freedom and a promised land. And Joshua, Moses' successor, was the sojourner who led the Israelites into the promised land. He was the one who crossed the Jordan River, leading his people into a new territory, a new era. Joshua's story is a story of courage, of stepping into the unknown, guided by faith. Each of these figures, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, and Joshua, were Habiru in their own right. They were sojourners, they were migrants, they were wanderers, crossing over borders both physical and spiritual. They were outsiders, yet they were chosen, they were blessed, they were guided. Their stories, like those of the Habiru, are tales of faith, migration, and resilience. These narratives remind us of our shared human experience, of migration, of change, of facing the unknown with courage and faith. And they inspire us to remember our own inner Habiru, the sojourner within us, ready to cross over into the unknown, guided by faith and resilience. So, what if we are indeed descendants of these ancient sojourners? What if the same spirit that propelled the Habiru across borders and into new lands is the same spirit that stirs within us today? Let's review. The Habiru, a term used in the 2nd millennium BC, was often associated with sojourners, foreigners, aliens and strangers. These were individuals who dared to cross over borders into unknown territories, guided by faith alone. Notable figures like Abraham, Jacob, Moses and Joshua shared this profound journey. Their stories echo the experiences of many today, those who find themselves crossing borders and stepping into the unknown. What if these connections aren't mere coincidences? What if they're proof of our shared ancestry and collective journey through time? These questions invite us to delve deeper, to explore the origins of our faith, and to strengthen our spiritual connections. Join us in our next What If episode as we continue exploring the fascinating journey of God's sojourners.
What if you discovered a connection to a mysterious group of ancient people known as the Habiru? Let's delve into the annals of history and unravel the enigma that is the Habiru. Imagine a diverse group of people not bound by common ethnicity, but by their social status on the outskirts of settled society. They were rebels, outlaws, servants, raiders, and laborers, a motley crew that found their place in the fringes of the Fertile Crescent in the 2nd millennium BCE. Their name, Habiru, echoes through historical texts from Egypt, Canaan, Syria, Nutsi, and Anatolia. But who were they really? The intrigue deepens as we consider the scholarly debates about their identity. Some theories propose a link between the Habiru and the Hebrews of the Bible. However, most scholars refute this, highlighting the distinction between the Habiru as a multi-ethnic social class and the Hebrews as an ethnic group. Yet the questions persist. What if there is more to their story? What if there is a connection between us and them? What if, as we unravel the mystery of the Habiru, we discover a shared history, a common journey? Closing. What if your ancestors were among these enigmatic Habiru? The Habiru were a diverse group, often on the fringes of society, but their story is woven into the fabric of the ancient world. Popping up in texts from Egypt, Canaan, Syria, Nutsi, and Anatolia, the Habiru were an intriguing mixture of rebels, outlaws, raiders, mercenaries, bowmen, servants, slaves, and laborers. They weren't a unified ethnic group, but rather they shared a social status, dwelling on the outskirts of settled society. But here's where it gets interesting. Some theories suggest a connection between the Habiru and the Hebrews of the Bible. Now, most scholars deny a linguistic relationship between the two groups, but there are some intriguing parallels. The Habiru, like the Hebrews, were often involved in military activities, serving as auxiliaries or raiders. And then there's the term Hebrew in the Bible. It's used in various contexts, sometimes reflecting traits that seem to borrow from the image of the Habiru. For example, the Hebrews, like the Habiru, were often depicted as sojourners, people on a journey, not quite settled, but always on the move. Consider the biblical figures of Abraham, Jacob, Joshua, and Moses. In Genesis 12:1, Abraham hears God's call to leave his homeland and travel to a land God would show him. Jacob, in Genesis 35:14, travels to Bethel at God's instruction. Joshua, in Joshua 1:7, is commanded to lead the Israelites into the promised land. And Moses, well, his entire life seems to be one of sojourning, from his birth to his leadership of the Israelites out of Egypt. But who were these Habiru really, and where might their descendants be today? Let's turn to the Amarna letters, a treasure trove of ancient diplomatic correspondence, which mention the Habiru. These letters, written on clay tablets during the New Kingdom period of ancient Egypt, offer invaluable insights into the culture, language, and societal dynamics of the Canaanite peoples. What's fascinating is the mention of a group known as the Habiru within these texts. These letters, discovered in the city of El Amarna, established by Pharaoh Akhenaten, are a window into a time when kingdoms such as Babylonia, Assyria, Syria, Canaan, and Alashia were in active correspondence with Egypt. Among these historical exchanges, the Habiru emerge as a group of interest, mentioned in various contexts, often associated with rebellion, outlaw behavior, and mercenary activities. Now, some theories have attempted to connect the Habiru to the Hebrews of the Bible. This connection is primarily based on the linguistic similarity between Habiru and Hebrew. However, most scholars deny a direct linguistic relationship, affirming instead that the Habiru represented a multi-ethnic social class, while the Hebrews were an ethnic group. The Habiru, as described in these ancient texts, were often involved in military activities, serving as auxiliaries or raiders. This image bears a striking resemblance to the biblical depiction of the Hebrews, who were often portrayed as a group on the move, engaging in conflicts, and living on the fringes of settled societies. Despite the intrigue and potential connections, it's important to remember that the Amarna letters, like most historical documents, only offer us a partial view of the past. They shed light on the Habiru, yes, but they also leave behind a trail of questions, mysteries waiting to be unraveled. The Amarna letters provide a tantalizing glimpse into the world of the Habiru, yet leave us with more questions than answers. Now imagine, what if the Habiru had a link to the 10 lost tribes of Israel? The 10 lost tribes of Israel refer to 10 of the 12 tribes exiled from the Kingdom of Israel by the Neo-Assyrian Empire around the 8th century BCE. These tribes, Reuben, Simeon, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Manasseh, and Ephraim, were scattered far and wide, their fate shrouded in mystery and subject to much speculation. The concept of these lost tribes has been associated with the return of the Messiah in the 7th and 8th centuries CE. Claims of descent from the lost tribes have been made by various groups worldwide. While some historians believe the tribes assimilated into local populations, others assert their survival as distinct entities. The scriptural basis for the lost tribes is found in 2 Kings 17:6, detailing the Assyrian exile of Israelites. The tribes of Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to the kingdom of Judah. Various texts, such as 2nd Esdras and 2nd Baruch, mention the lost tribes' journey and future return. So, how does this connect to the Habiru? Some scholars suggest a possible link between the Habiru and the Hebrews, and thus to the lost tribes. The Habiru, like the lost tribes, were a diverse group often on the fringes of society, involved in military activities and seen as outsiders. The similarity in the names Habiru and Hebrew have also led to theories of a linguistic connection, although this remains a contentious point. It's an intriguing thought, isn't it? Could the scattered tribes have become part of the Habiru? Could the descendants of these lost tribes be among us today, their ancestry forgotten over the centuries? Could the Habiru hold the key to unlocking the mystery of the 10 lost tribes? What if we are all, in some way, descendants of the Habiru? A thought-provoking question, isn't it? The Habiru, a group of people from the 2nd millennium BCE, were not a homogeneous ethnic entity, but a social class living on the fringes of settled society. They were rebels, outlaws, mercenaries, servants, and laborers. They were sojourners, much like many of us and our ancestors have been at some point in our lives. Migration, displacement, and the search for a better life are universal human experiences. We move, we adapt, we change, and we keep moving, driven by circumstances, by ambition, by the promise of a brighter future. This is not just our story, it's the story of humanity. It's the story of the Habiru. The Habiru were often involved in military activities, serving as auxiliaries or raiders. They were also known to serve as laborers, living a life of servitude. Yet, they were resilient, they persevered, and they adapted. They were survivors. Isn't that what we all strive to be? There's a certain connection we share with the Habiru, a shared history of struggle and perseverance, of displacement and adaptation. We may not be direct descendants of the Habiru, but we carry their spirit, their resilience, their ability to adapt and persevere. The Habiru were not just a people of the past. They represent a part of us, a part of our shared human history. They remind us of our capacity to adapt, to overcome, to survive. They remind us of our shared humanity, our shared experiences, and our shared struggles. So when we look back at the Habiru, we're not just looking at a page from an ancient history book. We're looking at a mirror, reflecting our own journey, our own struggles, our own resilience. Perhaps the story of the Habiru is not just ancient history, but a mirror reflecting our own journey. So, what if you are a Habiru descendant? How would that change your worldview? It's a question that tugs at our curiosity, isn't it? Today we've journeyed through history, scripture, and scholarly debates to explore the Habiru, their possible links to the Hebrews, and the captivating mystery of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. We've pondered on the Amana letters, ancient correspondences that offer a glimpse into the lives of the Habiru. We've considered the intriguing parallels between the sojourning Habiru and our own lives, our own migrations. We've asked ourselves, what if? What if our ancestors were these same wanderers, these same seekers of a promised land? What if their stories are entwined with ours in ways we've yet to fully understand? The Habiru, a people lost to time, continue to echo in our collective memory. Who knows, you might just be one of their descendants.